This week's Splash into Heels. Anticipating... Oh, see, I can't even get through the first sentence. This is... Stop! I know it's so bad.
Perfect. Well, sort of.
Sort of.
Hey everybody, welcome to Lions Pride Tavern podcast number 67. Tonight we find out how we did in this week's continuing raid of Antorus, the Burning Throne. I don't know why I do that. And happy holidays to all. The Feast of Wintervale is here. But before all that, let's start off with introductions. I'm your host, Stafford. I play a Dwarven Beastmaster Hunter in the awesome game World of Warcraft. Next up is JobUi.
Hi, I'm JobUi. I play a Worgen Frostfire Mage. Yeah.
And Lorelei.
Hey, it's Lorelei, your Night Elf Fury Warrior.
Wow.
Still sick.
Yeah, a little froggy still.
Little froggy.
So you're a froggy Night Elf Fury Warrior.
Froggy Night Elf Warrior.
But add such character. I love it.
Yes, and Epistle.
I'm Epistle, and I play a Pally of various sorts, and often deny protection Pally.
Awesome.
And
Something like that.
Awesome. Oftenly.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Charity is out on a very important field assignment. She's watching Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. So good for her. And out of the entire panel, I'm the only one that hasn't seen it, so no spoilers, or I shut off the recording. So how's everybody
temptation.
this weekend?
Great. Doing
Good.
well.
Getting festive.
I went and saw Star Wars, but I won't say anything more than that about it. Just went and saw that today.
Yeah, Lorelei did too. She went and seen it today.
Yeah, and so did we.
Oh, look at that. All you guys. See, I should have went.
Now you know.
You really should have.
We still couldn't have talked about it anyway because we can't do that to our listeners.
Yeah, that's very true. we would have got a lot of comments. Not necessarily good ones. We did get a congratulations from our fans, though. Congrats on doing 7 of 11 or 8 of 11, whatever we did for last weekend. So
it was 7.
They were excited.
We did 7 down.
And they wanted to say, especially to JobUi, of course I named you out there, but that it was amazing that we could get all of our people to watch the videos before the raid started.
That has been very, very helpful, and it has been super cool. I'm really pleased with everybody about being diligent on that. And it really has made everything go a lot smoother. And you know, you other raid leaders out there and you other raiders out there, if you're not watching the videos, start watching the videos. And you raid leaders, you know, have your people watch them. It really does help.
Yep, you just got to put your JobUi foot down and say, look, I am not explaining it.
Yeah, but you know, and it just, I think in general, it just helps everybody show up more prepared.
Yep.
And they get a look at it, and they walk in there with knowledge, and like we were saying before, they bring more knowledge to the table. It's really, really helped us out a lot.
Now, I could be wrong on here, but I have an operating theory, which is the farther we go and the more excited everyone gets, the more JobUi wants to tell us.
You mean like tell us like how we're doing?
No, like a little, well, you need to know this or remember this. I think it's normal because we're getting further along and not everyone has seen the videos. Well, I think most have. But then a little refresh is not a bad thing, too, if it's just the first time you're going into a fight.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it, on the explanations, I'm trying to keep it strictly to the strategy, but I do toss the occasional reminder of what some of the things do. Just because, you know, some of the folks might have only watched, like, maybe a hazelnutty video, which doesn't really give them some of the detail they might need to understand the strategy. So, but I'm still trying to keep it short and sweet as much as possible.
Yeah, keeping it light is good. It does keep us moving, and well, I think that's why we got as far as we did.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Hazelnutty, did you know that she does cooking videos also?
No.
I've seen some.
Cooking with nuts.
Cooking with
and
hazelnutty.
Cooking with
hazels?
hazel.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I watched. She has a nice, cute little kitchen in her apartment, and she sounds, or she looks exactly as she sounds. It was the envision I had when I first heard her voice.
She's
And then
such a
when I got
character.
to see her, I was like, "Wow, that is so cool."
Yeah,
That's
I didn't know
genuine.
she did. I didn't know she did cooking stuff, but I have watched like some of her other videos where she talks about stuff. So I'd seen her on YouTube before, but yeah, she does look a lot like she sounds, I'd say.
Yeah. So my hat's off to her that she has that much comfort in her life that she would show her apartment and her cooking skills. Because she keeps a very clean kitchen. Which I was told by a chef one time that if you're too busy cleaning, you're not cooking.
I don't
I
know,
don't know if
man.
that's true though.
I'm somebody who's studied cooking for a long time. I really try and keep a clean workstation while I'm cooking. I mean, sometimes it gets a little messy, especially if I'm like cooking a great big family dinner and I'm trying to cook like 4 or 5 dishes at once, and it's hard to keep up. But generally, I try and keep a tidy workstation while I'm working on cooking.
Yeah. And speaking of cooking, what's everybody going to have for the big Christmas feast?
I usually do a ginger and mustard encrusted ham, and I like to do like au gratin potatoes, but I haven't decided what else I'm going to put on the menu this year.
All right. Yeah.
We're doing ham too, but my dad is funny because he's like, "Well, you can't have ham without potato salad." So it's become a tradition that we now have potato salad for Christmas.
Are you doing like a German warm potato salad or more of a standard American potato salad?
Standard Southern potato salad.
All right.
And how about a pistol?
We always do a roast turkey marsala. I have a little cranberry cherry and walnut chutney I put with it, and then I have a side dish of mashed potatoes with caramelized shallots, some green beans with Meyer lemon vinaigrette and parmesan, bread on the top, and cauliflower with brown butter, pears, sage, and hazelnuts, and my family's favorite, the rustic bread stuffing with dried cranberries, hazelnuts, and oyster mushrooms. It's really quite something.
Oh, so you
Wow.
keep it simple. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah, just straightforward.
Well, like I go all out for our Thanksgiving meal where I do like a full feast with lots of dishes and whatnot. But when it comes to Christmas, I usually try and keep the Christmas meal pretty simple with just a few dishes. I don't go all out on that one.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, cool.
Not like a pistol. Going nuts.
It's easier than it thinks. When you do it a lot and you're practiced at it, it's straightforward. But some of these things we've just added over time and the kids are crazy over. So if I ever pulled one of them, they'd have my hide.
Yeah,
I just go get an $80 piece of meat and then hope I don't burn the hell out of it.
Oh boy, are you doing a prime rib?
We do prime rib, yeah. It's kind of been our
you
little
s-
tradition. We do turkey, Thanksgiving, maybe a ham, included. Now we do go over to my parents and they always have a ham, which I got volunteered to do this year. So they brought the ham over this morning going, here's it is, a big bone-in ham. I'm like, I don't even have room in my freezer for that.
Have we ever talked on the podcast about what I usually do on raid night, like every Friday night?
I think we
Yorkshire
mentioned
pudding?
it.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So
Got to try
roast
that at
beef,
some
Yorkshire
point.
pudding.
Oh, he got my wife hooked on it when we went up to Canada to meet him. And now she does it all the time. She had to go out and buy a special pan just for Yorkshire pudding.
That's great.
Oh, I just use a muffin tin. Easy.
Well, yeah, but her muffin tins were all like rusted, and she only uses them for baking for muffins and stuff. So
Like cupcakes.
Yeah.
cupcakes. You got the paper, right? So she had to go out and buy a new one that nothing would stick to because you gotta heat that butter up to the certain browning point, and
Mhm.
yeah. She does a good
Now,
job. She rivals yours.
Give her a little tip, though. Sometimes I mix butter and olive oil to prevent some sticking.
Ooh, butter and olive oil. I'll let her
Yeah,
know.
50-50, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll raise the smoke point of that butter if you do that.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I suppose enough about cooking. I mean,
Yeah, we're starting our own cooking
Yeah, right.
show
We're
here,
starting
yeah.
our own cooking show after Hazelnutty. So, how did we do on this weekend's raid? Because I and myself and Mommy Fortuna were not there. We had parties we had to go to. I had my new job's Christmas party on Friday night, and then on Saturday we had to go to a adult themed pirate party for a friend of ours, and I went as Captain Morgan and left as let's put it this way, I swabbed the poop deck.
Oh God.
There's an image.
That was just a pirate joke. No, I didn't get bad at all. It was kind of funny, but a lot of people, for the end of the year, I couldn't believe how many people still had pirate costumes. All I could find was an eye patch and a stupid sword that was like for a zombie apocalypse thing. That was it. That's all
Well, no,
I had.
I saw pictures. You had what looked to be like a Long John Silver's pirate hat on it as well. It looked like it was
Okay.
paper.
Well, that was paper. That's because all I showed up was the eye patch and the sword.
So somebody was like, "Here, put on this paper hat."
Yep. So, but what you didn't see is Mommy Fortuna. She volunteered to take the picture because she didn't dress up at all. She didn't even buy anything. She didn't even look. She goes, "Do you think the Pittsburgh Pirates would, if we went and bought that kind of stuff, do you think that would qualify?" I'm like, no.
Such a slacker. Oh my
I
goodness.
know, right?
All right, so we did fantastic this week.
Oh, here we go.
We did fantastic. We got all the way through Imnar the Soul Hunter on Friday night, and took a couple pulls on Kingaroth. Didn't get Kingaroth down. That's a pretty complex fight. It can get pretty chaotic. Needed some cleanup on it. Came back on Saturday night. Took down Kingaroth, I think, on our second pull of the night. Went on to Veramathras and downed Veramathras in our first pull on Veramathras. That went super clean. It was a couple minutes of explanation, and then we went through it, and it was lickety split. On to the next one. Went on to Coven of Shivara, and we it took a couple of tries, and we made some adjustments here and there. There was a suggestion made. I believe it was Dizzy who suggested at one point that we change the point at which we used Hero, and that made a lot of sense. And we shifted that, and we downed it. So we got Coven down. We did not go on to Agramar because we were short on time. We only had like 5 minutes left or something when we finished Coven. So that was 2 new bosses that we hadn't gotten down previously, bringing our total to 9 of 11 on progression right now.
That's nice.
Congrats.
It's
Yeah.
some terrific progress, yeah.
So, where were the hiccups at? Explain some of those.
Well, on Kingaroth, there was some hiccups on because, like I said, that fight's a little bit chaotic. I think a couple people got swatted by the beam. I think somebody stepped off one of the platforms by accident. It wasn't me this week. And there was people were absorbing the balls too close to the rest of the raid and too often. There was a little bit of confusion about how much effort people should be putting forth towards killing the ads, especially the ad that walked out and would hang around the boss. Because we'd kill one on one of the platforms and usually get it down before it would step off the platform or close to it, and then we'd have to kill the second one, usually as it's coming off the platform. But after a little talking to about, hey, you guys really need to focus those ads and stick on them, like glue, and keep blasting them as hard as you can until they go down, get those down quicker, and then we have more time to damage the boss. Then it started smoothing out a little bit. People were getting the ads down quicker, and we got through it.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue too is people weren't quite aware that if you hit the boss with everything right at the beginning, he'll take more damage. And so on Friday night, it was kind of lackluster, and I don't think the ads weren't going down right away. So they were just taking their time. They would often get released. The first ad would get released even before it was down. But by the time we were getting better at it on Saturday, they were all going down really fast. But I think if I remember, there was at least 3 or 4 people who hadn't even done the fight until Friday night for the first time, or maybe
Right.
first Saturday. So people were just kind of learning the ropes a little bit. They still didn't know what to pay attention to and what to prioritize in terms of incoming damage. So we kept pointing out a few of those things, and I think people, to their credit, learned really quickly, and that helped us tremendously.
Sure. The other trouble spot we ran into, which I wouldn't really call it a trouble spot. It was a learning curve because it was a new fight that we were progressing on, which was Coven of Shavara. There's one particular group of ads that what they do is they do a cast, and it's a really slow cast, but once they reach a full cast, then they apply a dot to everyone in the raid, and they heal themselves back up to full. And those particular ads were not going down quick enough, and we had a plan in place for how we were going to kill them, but they still weren't going down quite fast enough. And that's when we made the switch to heroing when those particular ads would come out. And when we did that, we melted those ads, and they were no trouble. We got right through them. Other than that, I mean, we figured out some tricks because there's another set of ads. The ads on that fight are really where I think the big trouble spots are. And there's some other ones that march towards you, and you have to slow them or CC them to create gaps between them so you can get around behind them and they don't kill you. And then after 30 seconds, they all die pretty much all at the same time because they only have 1 health point. So we were figuring out how we were going to deal with those, which, some hunters were like, all right, well, let's slow them, these 2 in the corner here, so that creates a gap. And then Durag he was using his grip to pull a whole bunch of them into one clump, making a huge gap, what made it really simple. But it was just a matter of learning how we were going to deal with those new ads, learning that new fight. I think next week, with the experience we have, I don't think that fight's going to be a real problem.
Yeah, we'll lose a few people who don't know the mechanics, but otherwise we'll blast right through it.
Yeah, it'll be easy to follow along.
So, how many people Friday and Saturday?
I didn't really count. I would say it was 23, 24, I would say, roughly both nights.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds about right.
All right. So it wasn't huge, but it was still pretty good.
Yeah, but like I said, I didn't count. I wasn't really counting. I know we ran 4 healers on the second night, and we let Shepard DPS instead of Charity. She plays her character Shepard with our group, and we let her DPS because we had 4 other healers, which she was excited about. She wanted to DPS, and I think we ran 4 healers on the first night too. So it's got to be somewhere around 20 to 24.
Yeah.
total.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was counting at one point early on, before we added a few people, I'd noticed it was 20, and then we added 1 or 2 or 3 as there were late arrivals. It really makes it so much easier, though, when everyone's got that kind of shared ability to invite, because then people would whisper me and I'd invite them, or I'd see someone log in and nobody else had their idea, I'd pull them in. It really simplified that process quite a bit.
Yeah. And, I got to say, just in general, everybody's doing a really great job with this particular raid. And I think it's because they're showing up prepared. They've got the knowledge in their belt when they walk into the room, at least some, they're not walking in blind, and they've got an idea of what's going on. So it's really been working out nicely. I honestly think that next week, because I having taken a look at the Agramar fight and the Argus the Unmaker fight, I think it's possible that we might even finish normal next week. It depends on who shows up. It's kind of an off week because it's close to Christmas.
I was going to say that was one of the things we were going to talk about off podcast was how much we're going to do, because I know there's going to be a lot of people that might be going somewhere else so they're not going to be there for the Saturday raid. And then, so if there's no Saturday raid, do we have enough on the podcast to talk about on Sunday? So I'm just going to kind of leave that one up in the air. If we have a
I
podcast,
can't do the podcast on that day anyway because we do our Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve,
right?
And so I won't be there for the podcast that day. But I did mention raiding next week and said that I was planning on being there and we'd see who shows up. And there was a number of people who spoke up and said they planned on being there.
Yeah,
for
of the
both
people that
Saturday and
spoke.
Friday.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of enthusiasm for doing it, but not, we didn't do a survey or a poll or anything, so we don't have a sense of numbers. But the general sense was people were planning on it.
All right,
Right.
good. Well, that was good to know because I didn't even think about it last weekend, and I was like, oh man, I wonder.
Yeah, I did think about it, and I looked at the dates, and I was like, well, it's the the 22nd and the 23rd, so it's not even Christmas Eve. I suspect people might want to raid, so I'll be there to raid, and so I mentioned it, and the overwhelming responses that I did get was that people planned on being there.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we'll we'll get together and see if we want to do the podcast maybe Saturday after the raid or something.
Yeah,
That
another
could be
time.
possible.
Yeah, that's possible.
I have another suggestion. We should all just get together and sing Christmas carols for 20 minutes, and that'll be a podcast.
For the whole podcast.
Mhm,
Oh,
exactly.
We want to keep our fans.
Oh, yeah, okay. I can sing
maybe
bass.
you can
anyways, so
sing,
I can
but,
sing bass.
I can play every instrument there is because I just hit the play button.
Ah, nice.
So I am not musically inclined. No.
Well,
I-
if not next week of getting the last two bosses down, I think in the next couple weeks raids.
Yeah.
I think we have a very good chance. I think the toughest two fights out of the whole raid, in just my personal opinion, would be Kingaroth and Coven of Shavara. Those I think are the two hardest fights in the whole raid, and we've done them both now, and I don't think they're going to be too much of a problem with our current plan. So
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think part of the trick for Coven is the tanking perspective on that one. I'll say a little more later in the podcast about some specifics on that. But you got a couple of experienced tanks who can compare this to other fights, and so we did some problem solving on the fly, and we're able to solve most of those, and we'll just get better as we go along.
yeah,
Alright.
and yeah, with Agrimar, that's primarily a tank dance, in my opinion. The other players are going to have to pitch in with helping with absorbs and whatnot, but that's really going to be coming down to Epistle and Durag doing the dance correctly for what the tank mechanics are. If they do those right, then I think we're golden, and they're pretty solid. So I'm expecting good things from that.
Yeah, it's been pretty easy till now for us, but the last two that we did last night, little more tricks to them, but I think we've got those down, and yeah, we'll do our research and be ready to go.
Yeah, there was a couple moments with the Coven where the tanks. I wasn't sure when we did down the Coven. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to push the Coven over because we had a group of ads coming, and the boss was down to about 5% health. And the question came up: do we do the ads in this part, or do we just stay on the boss? And I looked at the ads that were coming up, and they were not one of the really bad ones. So I said, stay on the boss. And then the tanks tried to do a swap, and it was horrible. They just stood on top of each other. Like, they're like, oh, my taunt's not working, and this isn't working. And the two bosses are like standing right on top of each other. And in that fight, when the bosses are on top of each other, they take like 99% damage reduction. So they're pretty much invulnerable. And so I'm like, on the boss, maybe the ads, maybe the boss, and then they finally got them separated, and I was like, all right, the boss.
We were repositioning them, but then one also cast, so even though it was moving, in theory, it was going to be a while. So there's a lot of wasted DPS there, but I don't know that we can get around that because of the ads we had at the time. Normally, the bosses stay separated the whole time, but after one of the mechanics, we have to run around, and we'll problem solve to make sure that doesn't happen again. But it was like there's an opening. I had to survive. There was only one, and so it didn't go as well as we would have liked, but it didn't take too long. But it was a little scary and hairy at the moment.
I think we only lost one person on that fight.
On the Second time in, it was like everyone knew what they were doing. They'd just seen it and got the feel for it, and it was fine.
Yeah, I think when we killed the Coven, we only had one death, if I recall correctly.
As a DPS or healers, did you actually have to run around much? It was just sort of switching targets, if I understand, except for that one phase where we all have to run.
We do. It's a good idea, I think, to. We needed to be positioned correctly for various ad groups that were coming. There's the flamethrower ads that shoot towards the middle, so people couldn't be in the middle. There's the other groups of ads that are going to show up and they're going to march towards the middle, so everybody needs to be in the middle. There's another one where everybody needs to be spread to at least 2 yards apart from each other because of the AoE effect we all have on ourselves. So there are plenty of little movement things. I found myself switching between one of the bosses. I picked one side, because you guys had 2 markers there and the bosses on each marker. And I just picked whichever boss was on this particular marker was the one I was attacking most of the time. So I switched as you guys switched most of the time, but I don't know what every other
cool.
DPS did.
Yeah, see, the only mechanics we had to really worry about as tanks were that sort of the room is collapsing one, and also don't stand in the fire one. But once I positioned myself, I really only had one to worry about. I positioned so the fire never bothered me inside or out. And that was really easy, and then I didn't have the other spreading out mechanics. So that's why I don't know what was going on for everyone else. So I guess it's enough to keep it sort of stirred up and busy.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there's enough going on, but a lot of folks they stepped up in helping to call out, like what ads were coming up next, so that I could, it gave me a little bit of relief because they would tell me these ads are coming up next, and then I would look at my list, which I had on another screen, and I could say, okay, they're going to do this, so do this, like spread a little bit, spread 2 yards, or get in the middle, or get towards the outside, or whatever it was that people needed to do. I was able to call it out because I could quickly glance and I didn't have to look at a timer, see what's coming up next, look at another screen to see what they needed to do, because I'm not entirely familiar with the fight yet, and then tell them kind of thing. So it took a little bit of weight off my shoulders on calling that fight.
That also happened with the Ruiners when they came on Kingaroth on Saturday night. I don't know if anyone was doing that for us on Friday, but yeah, that was really helpful too, because people were knowing 5 seconds in advance that the beam was coming and you did not want to be there.
Oh,
Right.
You didn't have a Stafford to sacrifice, so to be calling that out.
Exactly.
So, Lorelei, were you there both nights?
Now, I was only there on Friday, and as Jobui said, everybody did really, really well on those first fights. And it wasn't until we got to the what's the name of that one?
The Kingaroth one, or before that?
The one with the beam.
Yeah, that's Kingaroth.
All right, Kingaroth. That things went really wonky, because I remember last week when we did that, and that was the first time I'd done it. It seemed to go better, so I wasn't really sure what was happening. I know some people got confused about which ads to go after, but I'm really glad to hear that you all got 2 more down on Saturday. That was great.
Yeah, I think part of the problem on Friday night was that we would first beam would lose 2 healers, and that was a bad scene from there on in.
Yeah, I don't think people were spread out enough. And when the beam came out, it usually took out a whole group of people.
Yeah, on that one, we had one pull where it took out half our healers and a DPS right at the beginning of the fight. The first beam, wiped out 2 healers and a DPS. And I just called it right there. I just said, everybody jump off the ledge. Let's just die real fast. Just die and we'll get another pull in. Let's not waste time on this because we're already 2 healers down and we need them in this fight. So that was a very short-changed pull. But I think that's kind of important to do too, is to be able to recognize when, all right, that was such a bad mess up that it's better to start over than to just try and play it out and wait for reses.
Yeah, don't waste the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, we were pretty clearly toast. And yeah, I found myself going, oh, okay, not happening. And the fact that you called to jump off the edge was great.
Yeah, well, there's no reason for us to keep looking. We've all seen the fight. It's just executing properly. I mean, some of them we're still getting familiar with it, but most of us have seen the fight. So there's no reason for us to keep messing around with it when we're 2 healers down. Half our healing squad is dead in the first beam. That's
Mhm.
so it's just die. It's just a repair bill. We'll try it again real quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, if people have seen the fight and they know what it is and it's just an honest screw up, yeah, it's best to call and say, hey, let's just wipe it up and do another poll. Then, if they haven't seen it, then at least let them see a few more of the mechanics beforehand.
Yeah, if it had been our first pull of the night, I think that would have been not good to wipe up right away because people still would have had to seen, what happened and what's the gesture before and when it's called out, what am I looking for? Yeah, a little bit of a chance for that, but I think people have already seen a couple pulls by that point and we're familiar with the "you're going to die now" mechanic.
All right, so I'm really interested in your guys' opinion. Do you think, because, we've got 9 of 11 down so far, and this is what, third week? I mean, they haven't even opened up the next wing on Raid Finder yet. Do you think, and we can answer it one at a time, it's because JobUI made everybody prepare, or do you think it's a little bit easier raid maybe, or is it because that we were doing heroics and we're just such an awesome group? JobUI?
Yes.
It's a mix of those things, in my opinion at least. I think it's because people are watching the videos and they're showing up prepared, and um, I also think that we were heroic geared and ready for this raid. So going into normal of this raid, everybody who's been showing up are a lot of the regulars who got a lot of that gear and they have a decent item level. They had their tier sets. But I think there's a third thing that goes into that as well. I think as well as watching the videos, I've noticed that a number of players who had been struggling before, not only are they watching videos, but they're taking extra steps to improve themselves as DPS players or whatever. They're going a little extra, taking a few extra steps than they used to, as far as putting in effort into really contributing to the progress of the raid, and that's been great to see. I've seen numbers going up on various players, and I think people are pushing harder. It might be that it's a little bit simpler as far as the kill you now mechanics that we ran into in the previous raid. It might be a little bit easier, but I think 95% of it is people are prepared, people are geared, and people are putting in extra effort.
Okay. Epistle?
I think this is all true. I think there's also a gap, though, between when we're playing on normal and on heroic. I think when we get up to heroic, there's going to be more kill you now mechanics. So it's going to be tougher that way, and we'll have more of a struggle. And so right now, we're at our sweet spot of people who have what they need, both in terms of watching and being prepared, gearing, um, experience, good team dynamics. I think when we start to get into the heroics, maybe not the first couple of bosses, there's going to be a few more things that are going to get a little dicier and a little harder. So I think it's the normal versus heroic mechanics. So I think we're going to start to have some trouble when we switch into some of the higher levels of heroics. I say that with the "I think" proviso because I do wonder how much the nagging part in the back of my head is saying it feels like this is easier than any raid we've done yet in this expansion, and that somehow they haven't made it quite as tricky or quite as challenging. But that I don't know that that's true. It's just that nagging feeling in the back of my head.
Proviso. Wow, that's a big word.
I looked it up.
I was going, I don't even know if that's a word. That might be Canadian.
As I was talking, I thought I need a good word. I typed it up real quickly, and I thought, oh, that'll work.
All right, so I had a request before we go on to Lorelei. I'm sorry because I just remembered this. I didn't put it in the notes. I had a request to ask an actual Canadian why. What is the story behind A? Do you know?
I will answer that when they tell me why there is a southern drawl.
Fair enough.
Oh,
Fair enough.
see, I don't see that I hear myself say a southern drawl.
Well,
I know
all
why
I
there's
hear
a
is-
southern drawl, but I have no idea why people say A in Canada.
Well, I know it's probably a slang of some sort. Like Californians, they used to all say, what was it?
Actually, it's a lot like,
Yeah,
Um,
that's it.
Yeah,
it's
it
a lot
has the
like
same
that.
function, or right, or yeah. It has that same kind of function linguistically.
Okay,
Oh,
all right.
now I'm using more big words. Sorry.
All right, so Lorelai, what do you think?
What about my southern drawl?
No.
No.
Oh, about the raid. Oh, I was looking up. I'm saying, all right, why do I have this?
Now you
Because
got to research.
honestly,
Yeah.
I don't hear it, except when I say y'all, and I say that all the time anyway. What about? Oh, well, about the raid, I agree with everything that everybody said. I think everybody's really stepped it up. But one thing that I said a long, long, long time ago when we started this podcast was that I think people have a rating mindset. They're not coming in like, oh, this will just be, LFR and I'll run around and do what I want to do. And if we get a boss down, it's dumb luck. I think people really have fallen into that niche where they understand what being in a raiding guild means.
I would agree with that because I know before we actually started, we were all cross realm. We knew each other. We just got together. But we've all come together now, and we've come together in one realm. Most of us,
One
the majority,
guild.
I would say over 95% now, are in the same realm and in the same guild. And that takes dedication to move your tune because it costs you money and so on and so forth. But I think you're right, Lorelai. I think they've come together with that mindset because before it was always, well, everybody just does LFRs and then we do this raid, on Friday and Saturday, and then some people show up, some people don't. I do know there are players out there that used to raid with us that we've kind of left in the dust. I've talked to a couple of them. They're like, "Oh my God, you guys are doing the new content already, and you gotten 8 or 9 of them down now." And it's like, well, yeah, I mean that's what happens when you show up every weekend, though. But I agree
Yeah.
with you. I think that has a lot to do with it.
And you can still have fun because I've had people tell me, well, you can't have, you're not having fun if you're in a reading guild and you're not laughing in them. You can do all that, but you can still kill bosses at the same time
Yeah.
and make progress. And I think a lot of people have now understood because it's really hard to explain, I think, if you've been doing it for a long time, that there's just a lot of things that raiding guilds do that make them raiding guilds. And part of it is the way everybody thinks. And I think people have now understood that everybody has got a role they have to play, and everybody needs to know how to play that role. And it's not just running willy nilly and hoping somebody else can carry you through it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the things when I first joined this rating group, like years ago, like 4 years ago, I think, uh, it was billed as a semi-casual rating group, right? Which is not to say that it's just like Lorelai was saying, it's not just like LFR, oh, do whatever I want. It was semi-casual. It was designed to have fun but not be overly serious. And I think we're at that wonderful balance right there where people are they're taking it seriously enough that we're downing bosses and we're making progress and we're still cracking jokes and having a good time with each other at the same time.
Exactly.
It's been a learning curve though to get there because the more people we've had in, the less you can actually talk in our channel as we go, because it will be disruptive, interruptive. It might interrupt the fight. It might get sort of noisy and chattery, and so people have, I've noticed, done things like type in chat rather than speak sometimes. Some people maybe have held back speaking just to keep the channel clear, especially when necessary. We've not been naggy about that. I think people have gradually made that adjustment, which is positive. And the other thing is, I think we've had some people who wanted to do more high-end stuff, and so they've gone and done more high-end stuff. No harm, no foul. That's what they want to do. We probably had a few people who think, I'm just having trouble keeping up and it's not really my thing, and there's maybe a little more pressure. And I don't actually know who that would be, because I think we tend to bring people up and help them out. But I think that's also what's happening, is people are also figuring out, oh, I like this group, but it may not be quite what I was expecting or wanting from my play experience, and so they've kind of headed off somewhere else. And again, no drama, no muss, no fuss. I think the maturity has been the best part about the whole thing.
I agree totally with you there. The no drama is, and I stated that numerous times. I just don't put up with it. I don't like it. It doesn't do any good. And I think a lot of people that have joined us came to us because of that, knowing that we're still serious, but yet we like to have fun, but we're not going to go overboard, because I know there's a lot of people out there that they still complain to this day. I don't go raiding anymore because of all the 13-year-old little bossy butts who try to tell you that you're not doing well enough in the raid. And we don't do that. We help our people get better in the raid by after hours. We do after every raid, my wife puts together the mythic runs. And whether she's going or not, she still puts them together and gets, 1 to 2 groups almost every night. Both Friday, Saturday.
I will say that this week I got accused of using the daddy voice on the raid. Well,
That was a fun moment, actually. That was fun.
It was kind of funny. It was less like oh, that was rude, and more like, haha, he used the daddy voice. Because we were heading to what was it, Veramathras? I think it was Veramathras we were heading to, and you have to jump down that hole, but it's kind of confusing. It's not really obvious that you need to jump down this hole to get down to Veramathras, and there's a stairwell that leads off to the left that goes down to where the coven is, right? And a bunch of people were going down the stairwell towards the coven, and I was like, come back up the stairs. No, don't go down the stairs. Come back up the stairs and go down the hole.
Don't make me pull this raid over.
Yeah. And then somebody accused me of using the daddy voice, and I was like, I probably was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, we got to go to the. Oh no, we didn't broadcast that one. So, it's been lost.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, for our fans that actually join us, I know the last couple of weekends have been tough.
Somebody's got it somewhere then. Yeah, we need to find that and just put it into the podcast.
Shepherd does. She streams it, but I don't know.
She was there, so it should be on her stream.
Yeah,
she was there.
Okay, but I thought she was having issues on Friday with her internet.
Well, she was there,
or
though.
Saturday.
I mean, she that was on Friday that she had, I think, a disconnect, a DC. It was during the Kingaroth fight, I think, that she DC'd.
Okay, yeah, because I'm sitting there at the party, and all of a sudden I get these Discord, messages, and she's like, "Oh, my internet crashed. I'll be right back." I'm like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, I think that was during Veramathras. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember when she mentioned that she DC'd, because I just thought she died to some mechanic or something, and she was like, "No, I DC'd," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, unfortunately, the internet, that can be a life or death in a raid.
It really can. Although there have been times in the past, I do recall there have been times where I DC'd, just all of a sudden, poof, I'm gone, and then I'm trying to get back in. I get back in, and I'm still alive. The healers have kept me topped off while I was just standing there doing nothing DC'd. I was like, thanks, healers. You guys rock.
Well, our healers. Our healers just absolutely hate it when somebody dies, except me.
Oh, but they were threatening boycotts over the weekend, though.
You can't even ask them to let somebody die. we had we had you know like Sky Chaser jumped in one of the pods. She was one of the pod people this week, and she jumped in the pod, and her interface got completely messed up, and she wasn't able to use any of the attacks from inside the pod. And it's similar thing that happened
That
to
happened to
Mommy
Mommy.
Fortune.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar thing to that. And so there was calls for just let her die, because you get this debuff that kills you, and they're like, just let her die so
Ouch.
somebody can get in there and take over, because she couldn't even get out of it. And so they were like, just let her die, and then somebody else can get in. And the healers were like, no, we can't. We just have to keep healing her. And so she did a reload, and she got her interface working before, too awful long. And people were like, what's happening with her? And then I saw like some attacks come out of the pod, and I was like, oh, she's got it working now. It's good.
Too funny. Too funny. All right, guys, let's move on. It's time. I hear the music for Lorelei's Pet Battle Minute.
It has been revealed that the male elemental pet mentioned last week has been confirmed. This pet will be your reward from completing the priority mail quest line. You'll begin your journey with the Lost Mail quest, which involves picking up a letter around mailboxes found in the Broken Isles. Letters will have a respawn timer, so don't be discouraged. You'll get one. The letter will give you access to the mini game you need to complete to get to your new pet. Successful players will also get a bind on use item to pass the quest on to another player, similar to the Brawler's invitation. This sounds like a really interesting way to get a new pet, and thanks to the developers for continuing to come up with new ways to add to our pet stables. And don't forget that it's Winter Veil, and if you don't have your Santa's helpers pets, you better get cracking. These pets will be found in gaily wrapped packages found under the Winter Veil trees in Orgrimmar and Ironforge. More on new pets coming in the next expansion later, so have a happy Winter Veil holiday.
And it just happens to be Lorelei's favorite holiday, too.
It is. My garrison's all decked out.
Is it already?
Yeah, I don't think I took Lorelei's down from last year.
Oh, left it up all year, yeah.
Yeah.
My wife would do that with our Christmas tree. I think she'd just leave it up all year if she could. But it takes up too much room. All right, and then there's
Getting Thieves with JobUi.
We're in a new raid. Loot is dropping, for some of us more than others, but it is dropping. And while Blizzard is planning on doing away with tier gear in the next expansion, which I'm personally quite happy about, there is still tier gear in Antorus the Burning Throne. I often hear other DPS players asking when or if switching to new tier bonus items is better or worse than using gear they already have. Well, the answer to that question isn't quite as cut and dry as one would hope. In fact, the answer can be entirely confounding. Sometimes, yes, absolutely, it is the better choice. Other times, the answer is a hard no, or even not yet. As an example, I had a tier 20 4-set bonus from gear out of the Tomb of Sargeras. In the second week of the new raid, I managed to get a couple of tier 21 pieces to drop. As it turns out, the 2-set bonus from tier 21 wasn't better for me than using some of my other gear, so I didn't make the switch to tier 21 gear at the time. However, this week I got a couple more pieces, and switching to a tier 21 4-set bonus plus a tier 20 2-set bonus is absolutely a DPS increase for me. So I made the switch. Like I said, it can be confounding. So how did I figure out which gear was the right choice? I ran sims using Simulation Craft. I used the SimPermut add-on to run batches of simulations using different gear sets. And I blasted the training dummy in the Mage Hall, examining my results with the detailed DPS meter after every test. To make matters worse, I ended up doing this not just for one, but 2 specs, Fire and Frost. But ultimately, I found the right gear set up for me. So, go collect the gear, sim the gear, and beat the heck out of those training dummies until you figure out which gear is best for you. I know it's a bit of work, but a little work can really help you keep getting those deeps.
wow. You're a lucky SOB. You got your 4-piece already?
I did. I got it this week
Wow.
on Friday night. I got my 4-piece.
I think there's
I
people
have
that still don't
gotten
have the
not
two
one
piece.
set of tier out of this place yet.
See?
And one of them is
So
Warforged,
ticked off.
and the other one is Titan Forged. I've got
Jeez.
I've got a 940 piece. I've got a 945 piece. It's not massively Titan Forged. It's not like 985 or something, but it's still more forged than Titan Forged and the other two pieces. And my 4-piece bonus is really nice. It's working for both Frost and Fire.
You know, I'm going to say you better do one of two things for Christmas. You better buy a lottery ticket or make your trip to Vegas.
Yeah. I just pray to RNGeebus every week. Like to RNG. And it's just what I do. I make a little shrine. I roll some dice. Like, on my desk a couple of times. I knock on some wood, and I occasionally get loot drops.
He's got his little pink-haired troll right in the corner of his desk.
No trolls.
No trolls.
No, that's a horde thing, I think.
Oh, all right. Okay, and our tanking address.
What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking in a dress? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking? What's wrong with tanking in a dress?
This week's Come At Me a Tanking Minute is going over the basic tanking patterns that we're finding in our new raid. So today I've got 2 to add because that's how far we've progressed. Oddly enough, these are tricky fights in some ways for tanks, and yet in some ways not. So let me give you the rundown. Veramathras on normal, which we're doing right now, is a basic stand and deliver fight. You pull a boss, you stand on top of the other tank, and you just do a tank swap. Easy. What could be harder? Well, it's all about the timing. He will drop a debuff on you, which stops healing. When that happens, the other tank has to taunt off. There's also sometimes a little bit of ticking damage, which is not so great if you're already low, because you can't self-heal, you can't mitigate, you're going to be in real trouble if you're too low. So it really ups the stake in your mitigation game. So the thing you need to do is, once you've tanked the boss, make sure you're doing your very best mitigation, offsetting any incoming damage until the taunt off happens. So really watch that timing. Now, there's one little trick I found last time around as well, and that is that you can self-heal as soon as the debuff drops in a way that will get your health back up. Some of the healers were even saying they weren't even bothering to try to heal the tanks because we have some pretty efficient self-heals. But that's because we were timing them. We waited till the debuff dropped, which we could notice probably before the healers who were dealing with a whole bunch of other things to worry about. So we were very quickly able to get ourselves back up again in time, of course, to taunt, which happens pretty quickly too. So you have to self-heal, taunt, mitigate. Your game really needs to be at the top to do well. Second basic tanking pattern, although Veramathras is pretty much a tanking pattern of A, repeat, B, Coven, is a little bit of a boss swap mechanic. So you stand in one place for almost all of the fight, and you taunt the other boss off from the other tank. So we were able to set it up in such a way that we could taunt off each other, still be always in range, but you really have to be on top of your taunting game because it needs to be done fairly quickly. You can't damage the bosses if they're both in the same spot, so you really want ideally to taunt simultaneously, have both bosses moving both ways. But here's the twist. It's not just an A-B boss switch. It's not like, say, an Emerald Nightmare with the dragons that you were back and forth. No, there are 3. So you're taunting back and forth, and occasionally you get a third boss switched in. So you've got to see if your boss is just zipped out, so you pull the new one. But then you also have to be ready to sort of incorporate that into your little rotating taunting. So one of the things we're working on is figure out, can we mark the boss so that we can see which one we're on right now, which one we need to taunt, but only 2 of them show up on our main screen at a time. So a little bit of a trickiness. You have to be totally aware of how to work that one. So it's fairly simple, but it takes the taunting game and requires an awful lot of tanks to be able to be making sure you know which mob you've got, which one you need to get, and it happens fairly quickly, so you got to be on top of it. The other thing that happens in the middle of the fight is the different mobs that come around you generally can ignore. If you set yourself up nicely in a corner, you never have to worry about most of the mechanics, but there is one that will. When the mobs that create the sort of the mime's worst nightmare, when you have a box that moves gradually inward, you want the raid to be slowing people. Well, sometimes, unless you've arranged otherwise, as a tank, you've got a bit of a problem, which is that you have to move to wherever the gap or the opening is. So until we get a little better at that, you might have to run across. The bosses might, cross over each other. Little tricky, so you really want to be careful to be not doing that for very long. And if you get the situation we did, the bosses switch midway through, you have an even more complicated puzzle to solve. But the bosses don't hit so hard that they will sort of one-shot you, but you do have to figure out how to quickly problem solve, figure out which boss you need to get and pull it, and get back into position for an otherwise fairly straightforward fight. So there's a couple of basic tanking patterns which are simple but have a few twists to keep your tanking life interesting and intriguing, and that is, come at me, a Tanking Minute.
And she may not be here, but she is in spirit.
Baby, you got the heals. Now heal and don't die, 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 die. Heal and don't die, 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 die.
This week's Splash into Heals. Anticipation of damage. All healers have HOTS, heal over times, for a reason. We are supposed to use them for anticipated damage. We have to do fights like everyone else, including mechanics. Sometimes we are too busy running around like crazy Tyrande chasing Malfurion, insert Tyrande. I'm coming, my love. And we can't pay attention to anything else. This is why we need to know what the damage is coming and how to do our job to keep people alive and not die ourselves. That's why it's important to know the fight mechanics. Best way to do this is to not just read about it, but to actually see it. Knowing how much room is on your playing field, where to stand, when things get slippery, or how much damage and when. This way you can hot up your raid when you know you're about to become Sargeras's Fellhound's puppy food. Hotting up a tank before a large health crunch, even knowing that you need to coordinate a heal cooldown for times like the Blast and Antoran High Command. These are all things that make great healers, so be prepared. YouTube has so many videos that are healing gold. Use them to your advantage so you can become the best, the very best. Like no one ever was. To heal them is your real test? Never mind. Nerd moment, that's another splash into the heels.
All right, and then there's... It's WFN News, Warcraft Stafford News. The Neither Disruptor is up at the Broken Shores this week with Epic Hunter and Fate Smiles Upon You. That one's actually pretty cool. Go check it out. The weekly event on the Broken Isle is the World Quest event, so get out there, get 20 World Quests done, and get your bonus stuff. WoW tokens dropped in price a little bit, a couple thousand. They're 164 compared to 166 last week. And Taurus, the Burning Throne, Raid Finder Wing 2 opens up Tuesday, December 19th. So that's tomorrow night. So don't forget, if you haven't done, or if you've already done Raid Wing 1, Raid Wing 2, and then it's another 2 weeks before the next wing opens up. So they're going like every 2 weeks on that. So, guys, it's Winter Veil. Have you guys noticed any changes from any previous years for Winter Veil at all?
Well, I mean, in my mage hall, we've got our Christmas tree back in the corner, which I really appreciate. There's a great big wreath underneath above some of the walkways. It's snowing out on all the balconies. So I mean, we get our decorations automatically. I mean, there's Christmas lights across some of the hallways and whatnot. I mean, it's great. I love what they've done with the mage hall. Has anybody else gotten any decorations in their not mage halls, but their halls?
No, Vikings don't go for Christmas, I guess.
Paladins are too serious.
Right. I would imagine the Paladins would be all about it.
You'd think, but no.
But
I did go
with
to
the Paladins,
Ironforge.
you can come out of the temple, and don't they have a tree up there in the old ruin little building that it sits on?
Yes, I'm going to take my time to go up there to see a tree upstairs.
Hey,
about
at least you get
Sorry,
a tree. We don't.
I'm
we don't
sorry,
get
Lorelai.
anything.
That was mean.
Not
What
even a
no.
mailbox.
What about the little NPCs and stuff? Because even the Kirin Tor Invokers, which are like the students at the Mage Hall, they're all wearing Christmas hats as they wander around.
I'll
and
have to go
stuff.
back and look, but I really didn't see anything. Although I did like the raid last night. Which boss? There was one that had wreaths around the
Veramatras.
horns. Yeah, Veramatras had wreaths around the horns and a
Stocking.
Santa hat. That was
No,
nice.
he had
Oh,
a
wasn't it a
stocking.
hat?
Yeah, he had a stocking hanging off of one horn and a wreath hanging off the other.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic.
I was thinking that was a hat. Yeah, I thought that was a nice touch. I like that.
No,
Now-
Vikings aren't even partying. They're just standing at the table looking stupid.
Well, that's not fun.
Like, pick up a drink, do something.
Wow.
Yeah, they
They're
should
all
be
just
like
sitting there.
drunk or something, right?
Yeah, no, they're just standing there.
Festive Nog, Warrior Nog.
See, you guys are missing out because in the Hunter Hall, right in the big, great room, right on the end of the wall, there's a huge full front shoulder mount of Rudolph.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I'm kidding. I wish
that's
there was. That would be
always
really
there.
cool.
So
Right?
does the
No.
Mage Hall is the Mage Hall the only one that
Yes.
gets like cool Christmas decorations?
Yes.
Well, that's appropriate because mages are the best class.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, the Veramatras thing reminds me of back in the day with the butcher from
Yeah.
Highball.
When they put the hat on him.
Yeah, yeah, he'd have a hat on, you know, on his head and stuff like that. I love that they went the extra mile to put
Yeah.
like some holiday decorations on the bosses in the raids. I think that's
Didn't
fantastic.
they drop some fun stuff too?
Well-
occasionally.
They drop the Christmas plans or the gear, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
They would drop the appropriate outfit.
Now,
And
the sad part
that's
is
how you signified which boss you had to
Yeah,
go
I-
kill because that was the one that did it.
I still have to go get some of that stuff because although I collected a lot of that gear way back when, I have since cleared up bank space, and some of that stuff got deleted, so it's not in my transmog library, and I need that stuff in my transmog library.
Thought it was in the transmog library.
It's in there, but it's not active for me because I deleted it before they added the transmog library.
Oh, I gotcha.
So I have to reacquire all of those transmogs.
How do I do a plate transmog though? I want to come in as, you know, Santa next raid, but I don't know that that's possible.
You could probably do something pretty close.
Isn't it? It's all cloth though, isn't it?
No. They have it for
Oh, really?
everybody.
See, and I think the gnomes are just the cutest little things in their little elf outfits. I think all gnomes should be little elves. Lorelai's just shaking her head. I can see it.
I feel it from here. Yes.
Speaking of gnomes,
I missed
It's a
that in
disturbance in the
Dalaran they
Force.
used to have the little thing you stood in and it turns you into a gnome.
Yeah.
They don't
Oh,
have
there's
that
one in
anymore.
Ironforge
Now
now.
you have the snow globe that you can fly around in, but once you come out of it, you're your usual self.
There's a
Yeah, I-
Snowforge and Ironforge, a large one I noticed there yesterday.
Oh, okay. I'll need to go over there.
Yeah,
I-
you're only a
I
gnome
did-
when you go in.
I did see that somebody did a Google search on Reddit for, you know, like World of Warcraft species and of different races. And, you know, there's a Draenei, and there's a Worgen, and there's a human. And then, like, the picture that came up for gnome was a garden gnome.
Oh, man.
The claim was that Google didn't really respect gnomes in World of Warcraft, but you had him as a garden gnome. I thought that was
too funny.
hilarious.
You can put on your gaudy sweater if you're wearing plate.
Oh,
Oh,
let's
there you
get
go.
that.
Yeah.
Now, where do you get the gaudy sweater? I gotta go hunt that down.
Oh, that comes out of your Christmas present.
Yep.
So you're
Yeah,
gonna have
maybe
to
we-
wait until Christmas Day.
We should
Mm.
do that one raid night. Maybe the Saturday, the one before Christmas.
Oh
We should all wear our gaudy sweaters.
Or just do like
Just
our
Christmas gear.
Christmas
Yeah.
Christmas transmog contest like some of our others. I mean, because those have been really fun.
Oh yeah, new guild message. We should do that.
Yep.
Christmas celebration this weekend.
Next
Yes.
week is bring your best holiday transmog. That's what that will
I'm
be.
not saying I can get the hat though. That's not too good.
You can't?
Well, either I don't have it, like you did, I got rid of it, or I'll have to jump on a clothware and see if a clothware can use it.
Yeah, I know that when I look at my appearances tab, I can scroll down and I see in there are actually 4 different ones. We have the finely tailored green holiday hat, the finely tailored red holiday hat, and then there's the green winter hat and the red winter hat, which are the red one is actually more orangey than red on that one. But there are 4 like Santa hats, 2 that are newer with better graphics and 2 that are obviously older.
Well, I know I
Well,
still have my Speed Racer from one year I got as a Christmas gift. Yeah. Underneath the
we could
tree.
bring our toys too. Any Christmassy things.
And I'm seeing for clothies, there's the red winter clothes, which I
Yep.
guess I probably have that recipe still.
I have the recipe on my mage if you don't.
I think I do have that recipe because I remember getting that recipe ages ago. I'll have to make that for my costume so I can be all JoeBui the Wolf Santa and be Worgen Santa.
Oh.
All right, guys. Well, congrats on getting as far as you did. That's awesome. And yeah, maybe by next raid weekend we'll have them all down, or be at least working on that last boss, right?
Oh yeah, well soon, very very soon.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, great raiders of our group. If you're listening, you've been doing a really great job. I know I mentioned that like during the raid, but I just want to emphasize that here in the podcast that everybody has really stepped up to the plate. They've really been working hard and trying hard and doing the mechanics, and it's been fantastic. I couldn't be prouder. You guys have been great.
All right. So one other thing. So we all want to give a big shout out to Ro. He is having his 250th podcast this week. So shout out to Ro at the Realm Maintenance. That's fantastic. 250 podcasts.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yes, he's been doing it for a few years. So congratulations, Ro, from all of us over here at the Lions Pride Tavern. That's fantastic. I know he listens to our podcast religiously.
Well, we hope.
Yeah, well, I doubt it, but I know he does listen occasionally.
Well, those that do listen to us, thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
Yep, definitely.
Yes.
For
very
sure.
much so.
For sure, eh?
There it was.
Oh.
Yeah, that was
a
gift
forced
for you.
one, though.
Yeah,
that
but
was a gift.
Yeah, that was too forced. It's the natural ones that we really love.
Nah.
The ones where somebody goes, did he just say A? And he's like, no, there's no proof. I didn't say it.
I deny ever having said that in any context that can be in any way recorded or reproduced.
All right, I'd like to thank Sharm for all of her beautiful music. Please go visit her website and her YouTube channel. Links are listed in the description below. Plus BenSound at bensound.com and Vincent Moretto for our tavern metal music. I love it. All right, thanks everybody for coming, and happy holidays. We'll see you next week.
Happy holidays.
See you all.
If you like this podcast, throw us a like and subscribe to our channel. And please, leave comments or questions below. Maybe we'll answer them on the air next podcast. We are hosted on Podomatic.com. Our website is Lionspridetavern.podomatic.com. Our podcast also airs on iTunes for Apple users, Google Play for Androids, and YouTube. Just search World of Warcraft Lions Pride Tavern Podcast. See you next week, and thanks for listening.